I've been the sole maintenance technician at Calhoun County Memorial Hospital for 11 years. Before that, I was one of three. Before that, there were 5 of us, plus a facilities director with an actual engineering degree. But this is a rural hospital in southern Missouri, 42 beds licensed and maybe 20 occupied on a busy night. So the budget has been doing what budgets at places like this always do, shrinking. The facilities director retired in 2016, and they never replaced him. Gary Wolfort left for a regional hospital in Springfield in 2019. Dennis Keenan had a stroke in 2021, and that was that. Now it's just me. Dale Purcell, 53 years old, bad left knee, decent with electrical, better with plumbing, and responsible for keeping approximately 96,000 square feet of aging medical infrastructure from falling apart. I'm telling you this so you understand what my days are actually like. I'm not sitting in a control room monitoring things. I'm crawling under sinks. I'm on the roof patching flashing around the HVAC units. I'm replacing ballasts and fluorescent fixtures, bleeding radiators, snaking drains, repacking valve stems, checking the fire suppression system, changing filters, greasing bearings on the backup generator, and once, memorably, fishing a catheter bag out of the plumbing chase in the east wing because someone flushed something they absolutely should not have flushed. I carry a radio and a ring of 46 keys, and I walk, on average, about 14,000 steps a day through this building. I know every hallway, every closet, every crawl space, every utility chase, and every drop ceiling in this hospital, except for one place, the old geriatric psychiatric ward, 3rd floor, north wing, closed in 2009 when the state restructured behavioral health funding, and Calhoun County couldn't justify the staffing costs. 17 years now. Door to the stairwell access is locked with a Schlage deadbolt that isn't on my ring. The elevator that used to service that wing was decommissioned and the shaft sealed at the 2nd floor. The HVAC for that section was isolated and shut down. I can see the dampers in the mechanical room, tagged out with orange lockout flags that were old when I started here. I have never been asked to do work up there. Not once. In 11 years. You'd think that would be the strange part. It's not. The strange part is how normal everyone acts about it. The thing about working maintenance in a hospital, especially a small one, is that you become part of the social fabric in a way that doctors and administrators don't. The doctors rotate in from the regional network. The administrators sit in offices on the 1st floor and have conference calls with the parent health system. But the nurses, the CNAs, the housekeeping staff, the kitchen workers, the lab techs, these people are from here. They grew up in Seiler or Caulfield or the unincorporated stretches between. They went to Calhoun County High School. Their parents are patients here. Their kids work the cafeteria in the summer. And I'm one of them. My ex-wife Brenda was an LPN here for 12 years before we split and she moved to Branson. My daughter Kayla did her CNA clinicals here. I eat lunch in the cafeteria with the same people every day. Ruth Ann Mosley from housekeeping, sometimes Terry Schaff from the lab, occasionally whichever charge nurse is on break. I know these people. I've known most of them for decades. So when I tell you that something is wrong with this hospital, I'm not telling you as an outsider looking in. I'm telling you as someone who's been woven into the place so thoroughly that it took me a very long time to notice the shape of what was happening around me. It started, or rather, I started paying attention in February of last year. Ruth Ann found me in the boiler room on a Tuesday. I was checking the pressure on the secondary loop, which had been running about 4 psi above where I liked it. She was carrying a mop bucket, which was unusual because she didn't work that section of the building. "Dale," she said, "you ever been up to 3 North?" I looked at her. Ruth Ann is 61, been with the hospital since she was 19. She has that particular kind of calm that comes from spending 4 decades cleaning up things most people couldn't stomach. The closed ward? No, I don't have a key. Who does? Administration, I assume. Peggy Voss, probably. Peggy was the hospital administrator. Had been for about 6 years. Ruth Ann set the mop bucket down. I found something in the laundry. Okay. Sheets. From up there. I didn't understand what she meant at first. From the closed ward? They were tagged. You know how the old linens used to have the ward code stamped on the hem? These said 3N, pale green, not white. The old color coding. Could be old stock that got mixed in. They were dirty, Dale. Soiled. Recently used. I didn't know what to say to that. The ward had been closed for 17 years. No beds, no patients, no reason for soiled linens to exist. Maybe someone's been sleeping up there, I offered. Homeless person found a way in. It happens. Through a locked stairwell and a sealed elevator shaft. I'll ask Peggy about it. Ruth Ann picked up her bucket. I already did. She told me to put them through the wash and not worry about it. She left. I went back to the pressure gauge, but I thought about it all afternoon, and that night, and the next morning. A week later, I put in a maintenance request to inspect 3 North. I did it formally, through the system, citing potential concerns about pipe integrity in an unmonitored section during winter, which was legitimate. Unheated spaces with old plumbing are a burst pipe waiting to happen, and I'd been meaning to raise it for years. Peggy Voss called me into her office the same day. Peggy is the kind of administrator who makes you feel like you've already done something wrong just by sitting across from her. She's not from here. She came from a hospital system in Kansas City, and there's always been a frictionless quality to her, like she's coated in something that prevents anything from sticking. She smiles constantly. It's not a warm smile. Dale, I got your work order. Yes, ma'am. I appreciate the diligence, but 3 North is outside your scope. The parent system handles that section directly. The parent system handles maintenance on a closed ward. There are liability considerations. Asbestos abatement issues. It's been contracted out to a specialty firm. I've never seen a specialty firm here. The smile didn't change. They come after hours. It's all arranged through corporate. I need you to cancel that work order and focus on the items in your current queue. The autoclave in sterile processing is acting up again. I said I understood. I canceled the work order. I went and looked at the autoclave, which had a failed door gasket, a 15-minute fix. And I thought about Peggy's explanation, which had the texture of something manufactured on the spot. And I thought about Ruth Ann's sheets, and I thought about the fact that in 11 years, no one from any specialty firm had ever signed into the building's contractor log, which I keep. I need to tell you about Marin. Marin Oberhaus was a night shift nurse, had been for about 3 years at that point. She was young 30, maybe, and not from Calhoun County. She'd come from somewhere in Iowa, taken the position because rural hospitals will hire nurses with minimal experience, and she'd only just finished her BSN. She was quiet, competent, and kept to herself, in a way that the other staff interpreted as standoffish. I liked her. She reminded me of my daughter, that same quality of paying close attention to things while pretending not to. About 2 weeks after my conversation with Peggy, Marin stopped me in the hallway outside the med-surg unit. It was around 6 in the evening. Shift change. The hallway was busy. Mr. Purcell, can I ask you something? Dale. And, sure. Is there a way to access the 3rd floor besides the north stairwell? There's the main stairwell on the south side. That goes to 3, but 3 south is just storage. Filing cabinets, old equipment. You can get there from the south stairs. 3 north is the sealed section. Is there a connecting hallway between 3 south and 3 north? I had to think about it. The building's layout is irregular. It was built in stages, 1962, 1978, and 1994, and the sections don't always connect in intuitive ways. There used to be. I think it was walled off when they closed the ward. Walled off or locked? I honestly don't know. I've never had a reason to go up there. She looked at me. It was the kind of look that is trying to decide whether to trust you. I hear things, she said. On night shift, From above. What kind of things? Footsteps. And something else. Something that sounds like I don't know how to describe it. Like a TV playing too quietly to make out the words, but rhythmic. Like it repeats. Old building, I said. Pipes. HVAC. Structural settling. Sound travels weird in these places. The HVAC for 3 North is shut down. You told Ruth Ann that. I had told Ruth Ann that. I'll look into it, I said. And I meant it this time. The following Saturday, when the hospital was running a skeleton crew and Peggy Voss was not in the building, I went up to 3 South. The south stairwell is unlocked. It's a fire egress route. Has to be accessible. I climbed to the 3rd floor and pushed through the fire door into what was essentially a graveyard of outdated medical equipment. Old IV poles, broken beds, filing cabinets full of paper records from before the system went digital, boxes of supplies with expiration dates from the Bush administration. It was dusty but not abandoned feeling. Housekeeping clearly came through occasionally because the floor was swept and the light fixtures worked. I walked north through the storage area until I hit the wall. It was drywall, standard 1/2 inch, painted institution beige. It ran floor to ceiling across what had obviously once been a corridor. I knocked on it. Hollow. I could see where the original door frame had been. The mud and tape job was competent, but not invisible if you knew what to look for. I stood there and I listened. Nothing. It was a Saturday afternoon. Marin heard things on night shift. I put my hand flat on the drywall. It was warm, not dramatically, not like there was a fire on the other side, but perceptibly warmer than the ambient temperature of the room, which was cool 3 South, had minimal heating, just enough to keep the pipes from freezing. A closed, unheated, sealed ward with no functioning HVAC should not have warm walls. I thought about cutting through the drywall. I had a utility knife on my belt and a drywall saw in my truck. It would take 5 minutes. But something stopped me, and it wasn't caution or respect for Peggy's authority. It was the warmth. It felt intentional, like the wall wasn't just a barrier but a boundary that someone was actively maintaining. I went back downstairs. Over the next few weeks, I started doing something I'd never done in all my years at Calhoun County Memorial. I started paying attention to people. Not in a surveillance way. I just started noticing things I'd been too busy or too comfortable to see before. The way certain staff members would disappear for portions of their shifts without explanation. The way the schedule had odd gaps in it. Blocks of time where particular nurses were listed as being on duty but couldn't be found on the floor. The way Peggy Voss arrived before anyone else and was frequently still in the building at 10, 11 at night. I noticed that Dr. Randall Koenig, one of the 2 physicians who staffed the hospital on a regular basis, a family practitioner who'd been here almost as long as I had, started losing weight. Dramatically. Over the course of a month, maybe 6 weeks, he went from a stocky, ruddy-faced man to someone who looked hollowed out. His scrubs hung on him. His eyes had a brightness to them that didn't look like health. It looked like fever. I asked him about it one morning in the cafeteria. New diet, he said. Feeling great. He did not look like he was feeling great. I noticed that Terry Schaff from the lab had started working double shifts, not occasionally, the way everyone does when staffing is short, but consistently, 4 or 5 days a week. When I mentioned it to her, she said she needed the money, but she also had a quality about her that I can only describe as directed, like her attention was always partly somewhere else, like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. And I noticed this was the thing that really unsettled me, that patients were being admitted who I never saw leave. I need to explain what I mean by that carefully, because the obvious answer is that I'm not at the hospital 24 hours a day, and patients are discharged at all hours. That's true. But Calhoun County Memorial is a 42-bed hospital in a county with 11,000 people. The volume is low enough that you get to know the patients. You see them come in, you see them in the halls or in their rooms when you're doing work, and you see them leave walking out with family, or transferred by ambulance, or occasionally wheeled down to the small morgue in the basement. Starting in March, I started seeing patients I didn't recognize. Not many. Maybe one or two a week. They were always in rooms on the second floor. East wing, the section directly below 3 North. They were always elderly. They were always alone, no family visiting, no flowers, no personal items visible through the open doors. And they were always gone within a day or two, but I never saw the discharge. No family picking them up. No ambulance. No paperwork crossing my path in the normal way. No room turnover requests from housekeeping. No work orders for anything in those rooms after the patients left. I asked Ruth Ann about it. I cleaned those rooms, she said, and then she stopped. And they're clean when I get there. Already clean. Bed stripped, surfaces wiped, floor mopped. Somebody's doing it before me. Who? I don't know, Dale. I don't know. And I'm starting to think I don't want to. There was something in her voice that I'd never heard before. Ruth Ann has cleaned up after death, after trauma, after things that would make most people quit. She doesn't scare. But she was scared now. And the fear had a specific quality. It was the fear of someone who had seen something she couldn't reconcile with the world she understood. What did you see, Ruth Ann? She shook her head. I didn't see anything. That's the point. The rooms are empty and clean and there's nothing to see. But the sheets, sometimes I find them later, in the laundry. And they're not just soiled, Dale. They're wrong. The stains they don't look like anything I've seen in 40 years of hospital laundry. The color is wrong. Wrong how? Too dark, and they smell sweet, like fruit going bad. I'm going to tell you what I did next, and I need you to understand that I knew it was a line I was crossing. I wasn't investigating a mystery. I wasn't following my curiosity into some dark rabbit hole. I was making a choice, as a person, about what kind of man I was, whether I was someone who would notice that something was wrong in a place full of vulnerable people and do nothing about it, or whether I was someone who would act. I went to the county sheriff. Tom Waddell has been sheriff of Calhoun County for 16 years. I've known him my whole life. We graduated from Calhoun County High School the same year. His mother died at Calhoun County Memorial in 2018, and I'd been the one to fix the thermostat in her room when she complained about the cold during her last week. I sat in his office on a Wednesday afternoon, and I told him everything. The sealed ward, the soiled linens, the warm wall, the sounds Marin heard, the patients who came in and didn't seem to leave, Dr. Koenig's deterioration, Peggy's deflections. Tom listened to all of it. He's a good listener. It's part of what makes him a good sheriff. He didn't interrupt, didn't look skeptical, didn't check his phone. When I was done, he leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face with both hands. Dale, he said, I know about 3 North. The way he said it flat, factual, without surprise, made the room feel different. What do you mean you know about it? I mean the hospital board briefed me when Peggy Voss was hired. Part of the arrangement. I'm read in. Read in on what? I can't tell you that. Tom, I just told you that patients are disappearing from... They're not disappearing. They're being transferred. Transferred where? I don't see any ambulances. I don't see any paperwork. The transfers happen through the hospital's internal systems. It's above board. It's legal. The families have consented. Consented to what? Tom looked at me, and I saw something in his face that I recognized. It was the same thing I'd seen in Terry Schaaf's eyes. That quality of being directed. Of listening to something underneath the conversation we were having. Dale, listen to me. You're a good man. You've been a good employee of that hospital for a long time. What I need you to do is go back to work, do your job, and stop asking questions about 3 North. This is not something you want to be involved in. What if I don't stop? Then I can't protect you. Protect me from what? He didn't answer. He stood up, and the meeting was over. I drove home that night, on Route 17, through 20 miles of dark Ozark timber, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not fear, exactly. Anger. The kind of anger that comes from being told to look away by people you trusted. Tom Waddell had sat across from me and told me, essentially, that something was happening to patients in the hospital where I worked, that he knew about it, and that I should mind my own business. And his eyes had that look, the same distant, half-tuned quality I was seeing everywhere now. When I got home, I called Maren Oberhaus. I had her number because she'd called me once at 2 a.m. about a burst pipe in the utility room. One of those calls maintenance gets that can't wait until morning. She picked up on the third ring. Dale? I went to the sheriff. He's part of it. Silence on the line. Then, part of what exactly? I don't know yet. But something is happening in 3 North. Patients are being moved there. Koenig is involved. Peggy is running it. And now I know Tom Waddell is covering for it. I've been keeping notes, she said. What kind of notes? Timestamps. The sounds I hear, when they happen, how long they last. Patient names, the ones in the East Wing, 2nd floor, who show up and then vanish. Nursing assignments that don't match the patient census. I've been doing this for 2 months. Maren, I think we need to contact someone outside the county. State Health Department, CMS, someone with authority to inspect. I agree. But Dale, I need to tell you something first. Something I haven't told anyone. Go ahead. I went up there. To 3 North. 2 weeks ago. My hand tightened on the phone. How? Through 3 South. The drywall. I cut through it on a night shift when I knew the floor was quiet. I had a flashlight, and about 20 minutes before anyone would notice, I was gone. What did you see? Another silence. Longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Not scared, exactly, but careful, like she was describing something she was still trying to process. The ward is operational, Dale. It's clean, it's heated, the lights work. There are 12 beds and 7 of them were occupied. Elderly patients. Sleeping or sedated, I couldn't tell. They all had IV lines running, but the bags weren't labeled. The fluid was dark. Not blood dark, but darker than any medication or saline I've ever seen. Almost amber. Jesus. Each patient had a chart at the foot of the bed, but they weren't standard charts. The forms were different. The header didn't say Calhoun County Memorial. It said Atherton Program. Atherton? I looked it up. There's nothing. No medical program, no research initiative, no pharmaceutical trial. Nothing with that name exists in any database I can access. Did anyone see you? No. But Dale, there were cameras. New ones. Not the old security system the hospital uses. These were small, mounted in the corners. And the rooms, the patient rooms, they didn't have doors anymore. The door frames were there, but the doors had been removed. Like the patients were supposed to be visible at all times, from the hallway. We need to go to the state. I know. I'm compiling everything. I can have it ready by the end of the week. Be careful. You too. 3 days later, Maren Oberhaus was terminated from Calhoun County Memorial Hospital. The reason given was falsification of patient records. According to the termination letter, which I saw because Ruth Ann saw it, because nothing stays secret in a small hospital for long, Maren had been altering medication administration records on the night shift, documenting doses that were never given. It was a fireable offense that also threatened her nursing license. I knew it was fabricated. I knew it the way you know something in your gut before your brain catches up. Maren was meticulous. Her charting was precise and thorough. I'd heard nurses complain that she was too careful, that she took too long with documentation because she checked everything twice. I tried calling her. The number was disconnected. Not going to voicemail, disconnected, as in no longer a working number. I drove to her apartment in Siler, a small duplex off the county road. Her car was gone. The windows were dark. I knocked, and no one answered. I asked her landlord, a man named Pete Griswold who runs the feed store, when she'd moved out. Night before last, he said. Packed up quick. Said she had a family thing in Iowa. She say anything else? Nope. left the key on the counter, paid through the end of the month. Marin was gone. Her notes, her documentation, her timestamps, all of it, gone with her. I had nothing except my own observations and a description of something I hadn't seen with my own eyes. And that was when I realized that I was alone in this, and that the people I was up against had been doing it for a long time, and that they were very good at making problems disappear. I should have stopped. A smarter man would have stopped. But I keep coming back to those 7 beds, 7 elderly patients with unlabeled IVs and no doors on their rooms, and I couldn't make that image sit quietly in my head. These were someone's parents, someone's grandparents, and they were in a sealed ward that officially didn't exist, in a hospital where the sheriff, the administrator, and at least one physician were complicit in what? I didn't even have a word for it yet. I started with the records I could access. Every patient admitted to the hospital gets a record in the electronic health system, and while I don't have access to the clinical side, the charts, the medications, the notes, I do have access to the facility side, room assignments, bed status, environmental controls, work orders tied to specific rooms. I started pulling up the second-floor East Wing rooms, the ones where the mystery patients appeared and vanished, and I cross-referenced them with the housekeeping logs, the dietary delivery schedules, and my own work order history. What I found was a gap, a systematic, deliberate gap. These patients appeared in the bed management system. I could see that a bed was marked occupied, but they had no dietary orders, no housekeeping requests, no family listed, no attending physician listed, and their admission source was coded as Facility Transfer Internal, which is a code I'd never seen used before. It's meant for transferring a patient from one unit to another within the same hospital. They were being admitted to the second floor as a waypoint, a staging area, and then they were being transferred to a unit that didn't exist in the system. I printed everything: dates, room numbers, admission codes. I put the printouts in an envelope, and I mailed them to the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services in Jefferson City, along with a 3-page letter describing what I'd observed, what Marin had told me, and what the sheriff had said. I used my real name. I included my phone number. Then I waited. The response came, but not from the state. On a Monday morning, 9 days after I mailed the letter, I was called to a meeting in the hospital's small conference room. Peggy Voss was there. So was Dr. Koenig. So was a man I'd never seen before, tall, mid-40s, wearing a dark suit that looked out of place in our little hospital. He introduced himself as Martin Ellicott, Regional Compliance Director for the Parent Health System. "Dale," Peggy said, "we need to talk about some concerns." "I have concerns too," I said. "I've been trying to raise them for months." "We're aware," said Ellicott. "Your letter to the state was forwarded to us." I felt the floor shift under me. Not literally nothing so dramatic, but the understanding that my complaint to an independent regulatory body had been forwarded to the organization I was complaining about that landed like a physical blow. "That's not how that's supposed to work," I said. "Calhoun County Memorial is part of the Atherton Health Network," Ellicott said. "The state has a memorandum of understanding with Atherton regarding oversight of our specialized programs. Your complaint was routed to us for internal review, per that agreement." "What specialized programs?" Ellicott opened a folder. Inside was my letter, printed on what looked like state letterhead, with handwritten notes in the margins. "Dale, what I'm about to share with you is proprietary and confidential. The Atherton program is a long-term care research initiative focused on geriatric patients with advanced neurodegenerative conditions. It operates under a federal compassionate use exemption and is subject to oversight by an independent review board, not by state inspection." "What does it do?" "It provides experimental palliative treatments to patients who have exhausted all standard options. The patients are enrolled with full informed consent from their legal guardians. The program has been operating at this facility since 2011, in a sealed, hidden ward, with no public record, with patients who are admitted through a back channel and transferred off the books. The privacy requirements are stringent. The experimental nature of the treatments necessitates a controlled environment. I understand this looks irregular from your perspective, but I assure you it's fully authorized and legal. Then show me. Open the ward. Let me see it. Ellicott closed the folder. That's not possible. Patient privacy and protocol integrity prevent unauthorized access. I'm the maintenance technician for this building. There is no section of this facility that should be outside my access. Your scope of work has been defined by your employment agreement. 3 North is maintained by Atherton's own facilities team. There is no Atherton facilities team. No one signs into my contractor log. No one submits work orders through my system. No specialty firm has ever set foot in this building during my tenure. Peggy and Koenig said nothing during this exchange. They sat on either side of Ellicott like bookends. Koenig looked worse than ever. His face had a grayish cast, and his hands, resting on the table, had a fine tremor. He was staring at a point somewhere past my shoulder. Ellicott stood up. Dale, I'm going to be direct with you. Your concern for patients is admirable, but the Atherton program is legitimate, it's authorized, and it's helping people who have no other options. What I need from you is your cooperation. Continue doing your excellent work maintaining this facility. We'll make sure 3 North is handled, and I'd strongly recommend you refrain from further external communications about the program. There are confidentiality provisions in your employment agreement that we'd prefer not to enforce. He said this last part, the way people say things that are technically not threats. And if I don't cooperate? Then we have a different conversation, one that involves your employment, your pension, and potentially your legal liability for disclosing proprietary medical information. He left. Peggy left. Koenig stayed for a moment, and as I was standing up to go, he grabbed my wrist. Dale. His voice was a whisper. His grip was weak but desperate. Don't eat in the cafeteria. What? Don't eat in the cafeteria. Bring your own food. Bring your own water. Randy, what are you? He let go and walked out. His hands were shaking badly now. I stood in the empty conference room and felt the building around me, the hum of the ventilation, the tick of the fluorescents, the distant beep of a monitor somewhere on the floor. And for the first time, it all sounded wrong. Not like sounds a building makes, like sounds a building chooses to make. I stopped eating in the cafeteria. I don't know if Koenig's warning was real or the product of whatever was happening to him, his weight loss, his tremor, his hollow stare. But I bought a cooler and started bringing my own food and water from home. I ate in my truck during lunch, in the parking lot, with the engine running and the doors locked, like a man under siege. Which, I was starting to understand, I was. The next thing I did was call a lawyer. Not locally. I called a firm in St. Louis that handled whistleblower cases. I spoke with a woman named Patricia Dominguez, who listened to my story with the patient, calibrated attention of someone who had heard a lot of stories and was sorting mine into a category. The forwarding of your complaint is the most concerning part, she said. A memorandum of understanding between a state health department and a private health system that redirects regulatory complaints, that's either deeply unusual or deeply corrupt, and the distinction matters. I'm going to look into the Atherton program. If it exists the way they described it, there'll be a paper trail. Federal compassionate use exemptions are public record. And if there's no paper trail, then we have a different kind of case. She told me to document everything, to avoid confrontation, and to be careful. She said she'd call me back within a week. Patricia Dominguez called me back in 4 days. There is no Atherton program, she said. There's no federal compassionate use exemption under that name. There's no independent review board. There's an Atherton Health LLC registered in Delaware with no public-facing operations, no website, and no filings with CMS. The Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services has no memorandum of understanding with any entity called Atherton. So everything Ellicott told me was a lie, or a fabrication detailed enough to satisfy someone who doesn't dig. Dale, I want to bring this to the State Attorney General's office. This has the profile of a patient exploitation case, possibly an elder abuse situation operating under institutional cover. But I need more than what you've given me. I need a witness who's seen the ward, or a patient who can be identified, or documentation from inside the program itself. My witness disappeared. Maren Oberhaus, the nurse, terminated and gone. I'll try to find her. In the meantime, is there any way you can get into that ward? I thought about the drywall, the warm wall on 3 South, a utility knife, and 5 minutes. Maybe. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal or to put yourself in danger, but if you happen to find yourself in a position to document what's up there, photographs, charts, anything, it could make the difference between this going somewhere and this dying on a desk. I want to tell you about the next 48 hours, because they're the hours when I stopped being a man with a problem and became a man making choices I couldn't take back. The first thing that happened was that Ruth Ann Mosley came to my house. It was evening, just after dark. She'd never been to my house before. We were work friends, cafeteria friends, not home visit friends. She stood on my porch and she looked like she'd been crying, which I'd never seen. "They fired me," she said. 39 years, Dale. They said I violated infection control protocols. They said I cross-contaminated a sterile processing area. I haven't been in sterile processing in 6 months. Ruth Ann, it's because I talked to you. It's because of the sheets. I brought her inside. I gave her coffee. She sat at my kitchen table and told me something that changed everything. Before they walked me out, I went to the laundry one last time. I wasn't thinking, it was habit. It was where I always went. And the bin was there, the one with the 3 North linens. I opened it. She stopped. Her hands were wrapped around the coffee mug so tightly I could see her knuckles. There was a body bag, Dale, folded up at the bottom, under the sheets. It was used. It was empty, but it was used. There were stains inside. That same dark, sweet smell. And there was a tag on it, like a toe tag but attached to the zipper. It had a name and a date. What name? Evelyn Birch. The date was 3 days ago. Evelyn Birch. I knew that name. Everyone in Calhoun County knew that name. Evelyn Birch had been the county clerk for 22 years. She'd retired in 2019. She had Alzheimer's. Her son, Garrett Birch, had moved back from Kansas City to care for her. Ruth Ann, Evelyn Birch is alive. Garrett posts updates about her on Facebook. She's in a care facility somewhere. Or she's not. Or she was here, Dale, in that ward. And now she's in a body bag that someone put in the laundry. That night, after Ruth Ann left, I did something I'm not proud of and something I'm not ashamed of. I called Garrett Birch. I didn't know him well. He was 15 years younger than me, had left Calhoun County right after high school, and had only come back for his mother. But in a county this small, you know everyone enough to have their number. Garrett, this is Dale Purcell. I work at the hospital. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to ask, where is your mother right now? A pause. She's in a program. A care program. Why? What program? It's through the hospital network. The Atherton something. They said they could provide specialized memory care that the regular facility couldn't. She's been there about 2 months. Garrett, where, physically, is she? They don't allow visits. It's a controlled environment. Something about the treatment protocol. Does that seem normal to you? No, Dale. It doesn't seem normal to me. Nothing about watching your mother forget your name seems normal. But they said the treatment could slow the progression. They said there were results. And the cost, it's covered. Fully covered. They didn't charge a cent. Do you know what memory care costs? $4,000 a month. $6,000. More. We couldn't afford it. This was the only option. When did you last see her? They send video updates. Weekly. But when did you see her? In person? The silence on the line was its own answer. Garrett, I have reason to believe your mother is being held in a ward at Calhoun County Memorial that is operating without proper authorization. I have reason to believe the program she's enrolled in doesn't exist as a legitimate medical initiative. And I have reason to believe... I stopped. I didn't know how to say the next part. Believe what? That patients in this program may not be surviving it. Garrett Birch drove from his house to mine in 11 minutes. He was a big man, with his mother's square jaw and an expression that had passed through shock into something harder. He sat at my kitchen table, the same chair Ruth Ann had been in an hour earlier, and I told him everything. All of it. The ward, the patients, the IVs, the body bag with his mother's name on it. I'm going up there, he said. We're going up there, I said. Tonight. Should we call the police? The sheriff is involved, he told me himself. State police? My lawyer is working on that. But it takes time. And if your mother is up there, then we go now. I put on my work boots. I put my tool belt on. I took my flashlight, my utility knife, and my ring of 46 keys, none of which would open 3 north, but all of which would get us through every other door between the parking lot and the drywall. We drove to the hospital in Garrett's truck. It was 11:30 at night. The parking lot was mostly empty. Night shift at Calhoun County Memorial is 6 or 7 staff total. I badged us in through the service entrance on the east side, the one that opens near the loading dock. I know this building in the dark better than I know my own house. We went up the south stairwell. 3 South was dark and still, the filing cabinets and old equipment throwing long shadows in my flashlight beam. We moved north through the storage area until we reached the wall, the warm wall. I took out my drywall saw and cut a hole. It took 3 minutes. The drywall came away in chalky chunks, and behind it was not another wall, not a corridor, but a plastic sheet, heavy gauge, poly sheeting, the kind you use for containment during renovation. It was taped at the edges with blue painter's tape, and it billowed slightly when I pulled the drywall away, as if air was moving behind it, as if the ward was breathing. I cut through the plastic. The smell hit us first. Sweet, organic, cloying the smell Ruth Ann had described from the linens, but concentrated, not rotten, exactly, fermented, like overripe fruit, like honey left too long, like something organic in a process of transformation that was not decay but was not life either. Behind the plastic was a corridor. It was lit, not brightly, but with a warm amber light that came from fixtures I didn't recognize. They weren't fluorescent. They weren't LED. They were panels mounted flush to the ceiling that emitted a steady, even glow, the color of late afternoon sun. The floor was clean. The walls were painted a soft green, the same green as the old ward, the original 1978 color. The air was warm and humid, like a greenhouse. We walked forward. The first room we came to had no door, just as Marin had described. Inside was a hospital bed, and in the bed was an elderly woman I didn't recognize. She was sleeping. She was thin, not emaciated, but reduced, as if something had been gradually drawn out of her over a long period. An IV line ran from her left arm to a bag on a pole, and the fluid in the bag was dark amber, almost the color of the light. Garrett pushed past me into the room. "That's not my mother," he said. But he stood over the woman and looked at the chart at the foot of the bed. Dorothy Kessler, 87. Dale, I know this woman. She was my mother's neighbor. We went to the next room. And the next. 7 beds occupied. Elderly patients. All sleeping. All thin. All connected to the amber IV lines. Garrett read every chart, looking for his mother. She wasn't there. She was here, I said. The body bag Ruth Ann found it 3 days ago. Where is she now? I don't know. We kept moving down the corridor, past the patient rooms, past a small nurse's station that was unmanned but active computer, on screen showing what appeared to be real-time vitals for each patient, past a supply closet that was locked. At the end of the corridor was a door, a real door, heavy, with a magnetic lock and a keypad. And next to the keypad, mounted on the wall, was a small plaque that read, "Processing." Garrett looked at me. I looked at the keypad. I didn't have the code. But I had 11 years of maintaining every system in this building, and I knew that magnetic locks fail when they lose power. And I knew where the electrical panel for this wing was, because even a sealed ward has to tie into the building's main electrical somewhere. "Wait here," I said. I went back to 3 South, back to the electrical room I'd walked past 100 times doing inspections. Inside, I found what I expected, a subpanel labeled 3N that was still energized, still fed from the main, despite the ward officially being powered down. I opened the panel. 20 circuits, all active. I found the one labeled 3N corridor, mag lock, and I pulled the breaker. When I got back to the corridor, the amber lights had gone out. The entire ward was dark now, lit only by the green glow of the emergency exit signs and the faint blue light from the nurse's station computer, which was on a battery backup. The magnetic lock on the door had released. Garrett was already pushing it open. The room beyond was not a patient room. It was a laboratory. Small, clinical, with stainless steel surfaces and equipment I couldn't identify. Centrifuges, maybe, or something more specialized. Refrigeration units lined one wall, glass-fronted, and inside them were rows of bags. Dozens of bags, neatly arranged, each filled with a dark amber fluid. They looked like blood bags, but the color was wrong. Each one had a white label with a name, a date, and a series of numbers I didn't understand. Garrett found his mother's name on one of the bags. He didn't make a sound. He just stood there, staring at the bag with Evelyn Burke printed on the label. And the date was 10 days ago. And the bag was full, about half a liter of dark amber liquid that caught the light from his phone's flashlight and seemed, for a moment, to glow from within. "What is this?" he said. His voice was very steady, dangerously steady. I was looking at the other bags, the other names. Some I recognized. Harold Pruitt, who had supposedly been transferred to a VA facility in Springfield 6 months ago. Mary Calloway, whose family had been told she was in a long-term care program in Joplin. Names from the community, names from the county, names of people's parents and grandparents who had been disappeared into this ward under the cover of a program that didn't exist. In the corner of the room was a desk, and on the desk was a binder. I opened it. The first page was a header sheet. Atherton Program, Extraction Protocol, Revision 7.4. Below it was a summary that I read 3 times because the words kept sliding off my comprehension. Not because they were technical, but because what they described was so far outside what I was prepared to believe that my brain kept trying to reject it. The program was extracting cerebrospinal fluid from elderly patients with neurodegenerative conditions, not as a diagnostic procedure, as a harvest. The fluid was being collected over periods of weeks, processed in this lab, and shipped. The binder included shipping manifests to an address in Maryland that was listed only as a P.O. box. The patients were kept sedated. The IV fluid, the amber fluid, was described as a maintenance solution that sustained basic biological function while the extraction proceeded. The expected yield per patient was documented. The expected duration per patient was documented. The word used was viable window. Evelyn Birch's viable window had closed 10 days ago. The binder did not say what happened to patients when their viable window closed. It didn't need to. Ruth Ann had found the answer in the laundry. Garrett took the binder. I took photographs, every page, every bag in the refrigerator, every label, the equipment, the nurse's station, the patient rooms, everything. I used my phone and I made sure the timestamps were visible and the images were clear. It took 20 minutes. The patients in the bed slept through all of it, which told me what I needed to know about the level of sedation they were under. We went back through the plastic sheeting, back through 3 South, back down the stairwell. In the second-floor hallway, we encountered a nurse I didn't recognize. Not Calhoun County staff, someone I'd never seen. She was young, wearing scrubs with no name badge, and she looked at us with an expression that was not surprise but assessment. "The ward is restricted," she said. "Not anymore," I said. We walked past her. She didn't try to stop us, but I heard her making a call on her phone as we turned the corner, and I knew the clock had started. In Garrett's truck, I called Patricia Dominguez. It was past midnight, and she answered on the second ring, which told me she'd been expecting the call. "I have photographs. I have a protocol binder. I have names of patients and a shipping address. It's worse than we thought." "Tell me," I told her. When I described the extraction protocol, the line went quiet for several seconds. "I'm calling the State Attorney General's office right now," she said, "and the FBI. This is federal. Stay somewhere safe tonight. Do not go home if they know you've been up there. Your home is the first place they'll look. They know we were seen. Then go somewhere they wouldn't expect. Both of you. And send me those photographs right now." I sent the photographs. All of them. To Patricia, and to a second email address she gave me at the AG's office, and to a third address she said was a journalist at the street. Louis Post-Dispatch, who had covered healthcare fraud before. Then I sent them to my daughter Kayla with a message that said, "If anything happens to me, make sure these go public." Garrett and I drove to his cousin's house in the next county. We sat in the kitchen and didn't sleep. Garrett held the binder in his lap and didn't open it again. He didn't need to. He'd read the page with his mother's name on it and the date her viable window closed, and he knew what it meant, and there was nothing I could say to make that mean something other than what it meant. At 6:15 in the morning, Patricia Dominguez called. "The AG's office is sending investigators. They'll be at the hospital by noon. The FBI field office in Springfield is coordinating. I need you and Garrett to meet them at the hospital. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Dale, there's something else. I found Marin Oberhaus." "Where?" "She's in Iowa. She's alive. She didn't leave voluntarily. She was threatened. They told her they'd have her license revoked and pursue criminal charges for the records falsification they manufactured. She's been hiding, but she's willing to talk to the investigators. She has her notes. She didn't destroy them. I will not describe the investigation in detail. It is ongoing, and there are things I've been asked not to discuss publicly, but I will tell you what I can. State and federal investigators entered 3 North at 12:40 p.m. on a Thursday. They found 5 patients. 2 had been moved in the hours between our visit and their arrival, presumably by whoever the nurse on the phone had called. The 5 remaining patients were alive and were transported to a regional medical center for evaluation and treatment. All 5 had evidence of repeated lumbar punctures and chronic cerebrospinal fluid depletion. 1 was in critical condition. Peggy Voss was arrested at her home that evening. She did not resist. Dr. Randall Koenig was found in his office at the hospital. He was incoherent and dehydrated. He'd apparently not eaten in several days. He was hospitalized. I don't know his current status. The man who called himself Martin Ellicott has not been located. The P.O. box in Maryland was registered to a shell company that is still being unraveled. Tom Waddell resigned as sheriff of Calhoun County before he could be arrested. He was picked up 2 days later at a motel in Tulsa. He is awaiting trial. 14 patients have been identified as having passed through the Atherton program at Calhoun County Memorial. 7 are alive. 7, including Evelyn Birch, are not. The disposal of remains is part of the ongoing investigation, and I will not discuss it here. Ruth Ann Mosley was reinstated and received a formal apology from the hospital's interim administration. She has not returned to work. She told me she can't walk into the building anymore without smelling sweetness that isn't there. Marin Oberhaus is cooperating with investigators. Her nursing license has been cleared. I spoke with her last week. She is considering coming back to Missouri. She is considering never working in a hospital again. I told her I understood both impulses. Garrett Birch buried his mother on a Saturday in April. The funeral was small. I attended, but did not speak to Garrett because I didn't know what to say. What do you say to a man whose mother was harvested? What words are adequate for that? I fixed the thermostat in his mother's old house once, years ago, back when she was still herself, and she made me coffee and talked about her garden for 20 minutes. That's how I remember Evelyn Birch. That's how I choose to remember her. I still work at Calhoun County Memorial Hospital. The interim administration offered to transfer me to a facility in Springfield with a raise and better benefits, and I said no. I said no, because this is my hospital. I've maintained it for 11 years, and I'm going to keep maintaining it. The building didn't do this. People did this. And the building still needs someone who knows every hallway, every closet, every crawl space, every utility chase, and every drop ceiling. 3 North is empty now. Really empty. The investigators took everything. The drywall has been taken down, the plastic sheeting removed, and the ward is just a ward again. Old rooms, old floors, old windows looking out over the Ozark Hills. I went up there last week with a pressure gauge and checked every pipe. They were fine. 17 years without maintenance, and the pipes were fine, which is more than I can say for the people. I replaced the amber light panels with standard LEDs. I reconnected the HVAC and balanced the airflow and made sure the dampers were set correctly. I put new lock sets on the stairwell doors, standard lock sets, on my ring, where they should always have been. I swept the floors myself. I opened the windows and let the April air in, cold and clean and smelling like nothing but spring. A building is a system. It needs pressure and flow and light and heat, and it needs someone who pays attention to those things. For 17 years, something was growing in a part of this building that I was told wasn't my concern, and I let myself believe that, and people died. I don't have a warning for you. I don't have a moral. I'm a maintenance man, not a philosopher. But I will tell you what I know, which is this. If there's a room in your building that you're told you don't need to worry about, you should worry about it. And if someone tells you to stop asking questions, that's the most important answer they'll ever give you. It means the question